we can have them out, return from 1 to 1:30, find our way forward. This afternoon's resources at the current time, unless there is a cancellation, whips can come together to determine what meeting's being canceled and if we can return. What I have also said is that if we cannot find a time this afternoon, I am more than willing to ask for resources next week because the House is not sitting and we're not competing against them. But right now, between the clerk and myself, to get time to use resources from the House of Commons, I have provided you an upfront update and where we are. This afternoon, right now, it's not in our hands. But if something happens organically, like something is canceled, we would for sure ask for the resources. The first time it was said here, whether everyone wanted it or not, right away I signaled to the clerk, please ask to see if there's any resources available. And she maintains trying to see what's available. And the minute we know, we would share it. Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you've been more than clear of what the resources that are available and what are outside of your control. Despite Mr. Cooper's temper tantrum, at the end of the day, it was this committee that asked ministers to appear. They have appeared. So why would we not hear them out? If the Conservatives are actually interested in answers, then they should be all for asking their questions, getting it on the record, instead of them playing these games once again, taking their toys and going home. I think Canadians want to hear from the ministers again. This is what was asked. We're prepared to do so and then get back to the debate of the motions at hand. If the Conservatives want to play games once again, want to throw temper tantrums, then we'll continue to do that and the ministers can go on with their day. But this is what this committee asked them to appear to do. They are here, and I think it behooves us to actually get on with the work of this committee instead of more and more,
Okay, can I just do a point of order? Okay, can then we just do have unanimous consent motion? I propose a unanimous consent motion that we will continue after the ministers and return at 4:30 after question period.
So I can take that, but I would not be genuine because right now we don't have resources at 4:30. What I'm saying is the way this place functions is that whips on each of our teams is welcome to come together, choose what they want to cancel, and committee can meet. Between the clerk and myself, I can't commit to coming back at 4:30 until I have resources.
Well, I recommend that we do that and have good faith that you're going to figure it out and that the whips will do their job. Right?
It's fascinating because we keep questioning if you can have faith in me, and then you're asking me to have faith in a conversation I won't be part of. I'm on in public telling you I think it's an important conversation. I think we can find a way forward. The longer this takes, the longer it takes for the ministers to come here, the harder it is for us to get back at 1 and then to actually push the resources we're already pushing. So I believe, do we have agreement? Let me know that we have ministers appear, and then we go back into this conversation right after to find a way forward. If by then the whips have figured out a way to cancel another meeting and meet at 4:30, perfect. If not, what I'm committing is I'll find you a time next week, whenever you want to meet, and we can continue this conversation during the constituency week, because then it's not the whips who decide that. Between the clerk and I, we can try to push and get some resources like we have for the other 1064s that have happened. So rather than it be a 1064 for anybody watching, emergency meeting, we can actually plan when we're doing it and then work around our schedules. I think that's reasonable. Mr. Cooper.
Just to be crystal clear, if the majority of whips ensure that there are resources available at 4:30 this afternoon, are you going to be here? And our Liberal MP is going to show up?
So it's interesting enough that you would say that, Mr. Cooper. I made that same comment to the clerk, and the clerk said she's not sure how that stuff functions. What she does know is we don't have resources right now, and what the House has told us is that whips can determine the way forward. And so therefore, I am, as a chair does, taking process advice from the clerk and doing my job as the chair of this committee. And so therefore, I'm on the record telling you what my intentions are. There's just certain things I can't control them. And if I could, I would have a lot of wishes, I can tell you. And one of them would be to ensure Canadians actually had full confidence in our systems. So with that, Mr. Turnbull.
Just really quick, I think we're wasting the precious time that we had dedicated to hearing from a panel of ministers because of this. we'll come back when we can, when the resources are available. So let's get on with questioning the ministers. If members are truly serious about getting to the bottom of this and getting answers, then why are we wasting the time of ministers? Let's move on.
I'm going to propose. It is currently 10:78. We can have ministers leave at, sorry, 12:08. I'm ready for this to, yeah. 12:08. I can offer you ministers stay for 1 hour, or we ask ministers leave at 1 o'clock. Would you like ministers to stay for 1 hour? Or would you like ministers to leave at 1 o'clock? Mr. Cooper.
Madam Chair, I just want to put on the record that opposition whips have agreed to coming back at 4:30 and free up necessary resources. So I want to put that on the record, and therefore I want your assurance that you're going to be here at 4:30 along with Liberal MPs.
So when my clerk tells me that, and I know it, I will go from there. So can we get this meeting
So I would
going?
like the ministers here for the full hour.
What
and
hour?
I certainly hope we'll be back here at 4:30. And if we aren't, I guess we'll deal with that then.
We will get it dealt with, for sure. Is there anybody who's opposed to having ministers here for 1 hour? I would ask that, so we're adjourning this part of the meeting, starting the next meeting, and coming back to,
We suspend.
we
We're
can't
agreed to
suspend.
We're suspended.
Suspend.
Okay, we'll suspend, and we will just take, you know what, nobody gets a washroom break. We're just gonna get the panel switched over, and everyone deal with it, I guess. And welcome, ministers, please come in and join us. We will continue our meeting, and everybody should be in their seats in literally 2 minutes, because I will continue the meeting. Thank you. LeBlanc, and thank you for coming. Accompanying the ministers today, we have from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, Tara Denham, Director General, Office of Human Rights, Freedoms and Inclusion, Jenny Chen, Executive Director, Greater China Political and Coordination, and from the Privy Council Office, Alan Sutherland, Assistant Secretary to the Cabinet Machinery of Government and Democratic Institutions. A reminder, all comments are to go through the chair, and the better you keep this meeting going, the faster it goes. So a lot of it's also in your hands. With that, ministers, if you can signal me who would like to go first, and if we can always keep our comments tight. Minister Joly, it's a pleasure to have you back. Thank you for taking the time. The floor is yours.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm delighted to see everyone here today. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to discuss this very important issue. The Government of Canada takes allegations of interference and coercive diplomacy by foreign agents, no matter where they come from, very seriously. Ensuring the security of Canadians and protecting our democratic institutions are top priorities for the government. We do not tolerate interference in our democracy and elections. Never, ever. Canadians should never feel unsafe or threatened, especially if they are part of a community that puts them at risk. All Canadians should feel able to participate in our civil society and democracy without fear of reprisal and with confidence.
Madam Chair, the work this committee is doing is critical. Democracy is a choice. It is often a fight, and it takes work every day to defend and promote it. Canada's democracy is among the strongest and the most stable in the world. This stability is the basis for the safety, prosperity, and growth that our citizens enjoy. It is worth protecting, and this should never be a partisan issue. Les rapports faisant état
Reports of Chinese interference in the 2021 Canadian general election are deeply troubling. We have been clear with China, both here at home and in other fora internationally, that Canada will never tolerate any form of foreign interference either in our democracy or in our internal affairs. I have made this point repeatedly with China, including last week when I met with my Chinese counterpart. We will never accept any infringement of our sovereignty nor any violation by Chinese diplomats of the Vienna Convention on Canadian soil.
I will repeat this in English. Canada will never tolerate any form of foreign interference in our democracy, nor in our internal affairs. We will never accept any breach of our territorial integrity and sovereignty, and we will never accept any breach by Chinese diplomats of the Vienna Convention on Canada's soil. I have conveyed this to my Chinese counterparts on numerous occasions, including just days ago at the G20. Senior officials in my department have also repeatedly delivered this message in recent weeks and months. We have told them directly, unequivocally, that we will not tolerate any form of interference. We will continue to do what is necessary to defend our national security and national interest. The question of foreign interference is not one that is unique to Canada. This is something that our partners and allies around the world are grappling with. And as foreign ministers, my counterparts and I work together to share best practices in countering foreign threats to democracy. China's rise as a global actor is reshaping the strategic outlook of every state in the region, including Canada. I've said it before, and I will say it again. China is an increasingly disruptive global power. We have been very clear about our approach with China in our Indo-Pacific strategy. We will challenge China when we ought to, and we will cooperate when we must. We will never hold back from sharing our concerns and principles. We will never apologize for defending our national interest. And as we forge ahead with a strong, multidimensional approach to China, we will always differentiate between the Chinese government and the Chinese people themselves.
Through the Indo-Pacific strategy, we at Global Affairs Canada are deepening our understanding of how China thinks, operates and plans, how it exerts its influence in the region and around the world. Key embassies in our network will be staffed with specialised experts to deepen our understanding of the challenges China faces and the opportunities it seizes. This will be the focus of our diplomatic efforts, and the work has already begun. We are also doing more to protect Canadian infrastructure, democracy, and Canadian citizens from foreign interference. This includes modernising the Investment Canada Act, protecting our critical mineral supply chains, and preserving Canadian intellectual property and research. We are increasing the resources of our security infrastructure to protect Canadians from clandestine or coercive influence by foreign states. We are also strengthening Canada's ability to effectively collect, develop and deliver intelligence, analysis and assessments to better understand the threats of foreign interference, hostile activities by state actors and economic coercion.
Chair, just a paragraph. We will continue to take this issue seriously, very seriously, and work at multiple levels to shield our democratic institutions from foreign interference. And so thank you for giving me this opportunity to have a discussion with you and answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Now, Minister LeBlanc, you get 4.5 minutes.
Madam Chair, I'll endeavour to finish in less than that. Je vous remercie, Madame.
I'd like to thank you, Madam Chairperson, once again for today's invitation. You've already introduced my colleague, Al Sutherland.
Reiterate what my colleague, the Foreign Affairs Minister, said. Protecting our democracy and democratic institutions against threats of foreign interference is critical. It's critical to our government and to all Canadians. We obviously don't tolerate in any form foreign interference or attempts to undermine democratic processes in Canada. That's why the Prime Minister announced on Monday evening the appointment of an independent special rapporteur who will have a wide mandate to formulate specific recommendations on the protection of our democracy. In the coming weeks, he or she will be asked to inform the work of the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians and the National Security, Intelligence and Review Agency, as well as other processes underway to identify gaps in our system and further advice, obviously, on how to close those gaps.
It's important for Canadians to know all the steps that we are taking to protect Canadians and our democracy at all times. This committee has heard from various witnesses last week that clarified the nature of intelligence and how important context is in order to get a complete picture. And I would like to repeat here and now that the strong process that is in place when national security organizations get their hands on intelligence may have a bearing on our national public safety, and those protections have been put in place. It's important for Canadians to understand all the steps that we are taking to protect Canadians and our democracy.
Speaking frankly with Canadians on the threats facing the country, and by continuing to adapt our measures to that evolving threat. This issue is not new, and it's not unique to Canada as well. Public threats were reported by the Communications Security Establishment and by the Canadian Security Intelligence Services for over a decade, and they have identified concerns of foreign interference and threats to democratic institutions. All our allies around the world, including our Five Eyes partners, are concerned about the threats of foreign states working to advance their interests and to undermine ours. Threats that are designed to continue to undermine Canada's security, democracy, and social fabric. But equally, Madam Chair, Canada is recognized as having stepped up as a global leader in responding to election interference. We've taken a number of steps since the election in 2015, and we continue to build on these actions because threats to our democracy continue to evolve, and so, therefore, must our responses. Madam Chair, we've talked about the critical election incident public protocol, a senior committee of public servants, many of whom testified before this committee last week. This protocol established the panel, which is designed to provide Canadians with a non-partisan, transparent process where these public servants can communicate clearly and impartially with Canadians during an election in the event of an incident or series of incidents that threaten the integrity of a federal election. Madame la Présidente, bien...
Madam Chairperson, although a lot of attention has been given to the composition of this task force, there are cabinet directives on the protocol which clearly set out that as soon as national security organisations get wind of foreign interference in a general election, it is incumbent upon them to examine all options to address the issue effectively, efficiently, immediately.
Independent evaluation of the protocol was recently completed, and a public version was released last week. We are actively considering the recommendations made by Mr. Rosenberg with a view to continually improving our measures to protect institutions, as I said, from foreign interference. The Prime Minister announced on Monday that we will release a plan for the implementation of recommendations from Mr. Rosenberg, as well as others, within the next 3 weeks. These are but a few examples, Madam Chair, of actions our government has taken and will continue to take to protect Canadian democracy. And now, obviously, Melanie and I are very enthusiastic to answer all your questions.
Thank you, Minister. 6-minute round, starting with Mr. Berthold.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Ministers and your staff, thank you for being here. Minister, you made a statement earlier. We will never tolerate foreign interference in Canada. You're good at strong rhetoric that strike us as being firm, but I'd like to know from your mouth how many Beijing diplomats have been expelled by your department or by the federal government in 2018? Response. Thank you very much. I'd be pleased to respond to that question. Not only are my statements heartfelt and strong, but they have a lot to do with the government's undertaking. Well, how many diplomats were expelled in 2018? I'm attempting to answer that, so if you'll just allow me to do so. First, when it comes to engagements with China, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have a number of tools at my disposal. And to respond directly to your question, if there are any diplomats who violate the Vienna Convention or Canadian law, I will never hesitate for a moment to expel them. Well, let's make this simple, says Mr. Berthold. Let's make this simple. I have a straightforward question.
I'm just going to bring up what we all know is that Mr. Berthold is talking over the minister. If he wants to get responses to his questions, I think we should be able to hear the minister's response. Thank you.
So I am going to state at the beginning of my comments, I was very clear that if we cannot have a good conversation, all comments, colleagues, ministers, everyone alike, goes through the chair. Donc, on fait tous nos commentaires parmi.
All comments go through the chairperson. If we can't take turns,
They do when there's one person speaking at a time. I think also, I recognize time does belong to members, but to be actually pretending like this is a courtroom and going back and forth also doesn't help. Because on one side, we're saying this is a very important conversation and we all want to get there. And on the other time, we're kind of trying to make a show out of it. And so I think we should be mindful about how we answer questions. As I asked earlier to both yourselves, let's just try to keep it tight. The whole concept of thanking for a question or whatever else, I guess today it's not needed. We just said it once at the beginning, we'll say it at the end, we'll go on our way. So we'll ask questions, answer questions as factual as possible, and we can make this work. Mr. Berthold, la parole.
the floor is yours. Mr. Berthold, thank you, Madam Chairperson. So I'll repeat my question. How many diplomats were expelled by the Government of Canada in 2018? Chinese diplomats. As Foreign Minister, as I said to you, I have several tools in my toolbox at my disposal to manage relationships with various countries, including China. Therefore, what we did, I assume that's what you want to know, Madam Chairperson, can I take back the floor, please? I asked a question in relation to 2018. I understand there were no expulsions then. In 2019, how many diplomats were expelled? Well, my dear colleague, as far as diplomatic relations are concerned, it's important to understand that, of course, the Vienna Convention must be upheld. Were it to be violated, we will expel those diplomats. That much is clear. Madam Chairperson, through you, I understand that I'm not getting an answer about 2019. 2021, how many diplomats were expelled? Response. Well, it's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. What we can do, and this was in the news this morning, we can deny visas, Madam Chairperson, 2021, in 2022, in 2023. I'm doing my best, Madam Chairperson.
The more time we take like this, the less time we actually have. And so I just really do want to find a way forward. Please, let's maximize our time, all of us. Mr. Turnbull, on a point of order.
I just want the minister to be able to be given the space and time to respond to the questions that Mr. Berthold is posing. I think it's important. He has important questions, but I think he should be equally interested in the answers that he's getting.
I think some of us do want that. Unfortunately, the way this place functions is not functional because members do believe they own the time, and therefore there are some processes that work that would be equal time for the question and the answer because, well, I won't get into commentary. So I would just ask Mr. Berthold, si on peut prendre un peu de temps parce que
If we can just give a bit of leeway to our witnesses, the witnesses need a little bit of time to offer up an answer.
to each other and find the way forward. So I will just say your time is limited, and if this is going to keep being interrupted, then I'm going to have to let the clock run rather than keep pausing it. Mr. Berthold, la parole.
The floor is yours. Madam Chairperson, I haven't used the time as I would have liked to, and I'll continue to make an attempt to do so. I just want a figure, a single figure, and the figure I've got from the minister is 0. And we can see that this cover-up campaign is still underway. It's all well and good to say we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to be strong in the face of China. But the facts speak for themselves. The facts speak for themselves. There was not a single diplomat expelled, despite the numerous briefings that have taken place over a good many years. Second question, when did the minister learn of the existence of Chinese police stations in Quebec? Response. let me just come to back to your previous question, colleague. Each and every time that we make a decision in relation to another country, including China, we think about an important sacrosanct rule, and that is reciprocity. Every time we make a decision about diplomats here on Canadian soil, that has a bearing on their diplomats, our diplomats in China. We need eyes and ears in China. Now, when it comes to protecting, specifically when it comes to protecting Canadians who are on Chinese soil, we saw this play out with the two Michaels. Madam Chairperson, I understand the principle, says Mr. Berthold. It's important to know what's going on in China, says Minister Joly. The interpreter must suspend service as it is impossible to interpret. Unfortunately, I didn't get any answers to any of the questions I asked.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I don't know if you have your earpiece in, but the interpreter has been so frustrated by this interaction that they have said that they are refusing interpretation, and so therefore I don't think it's fair to continue questions in this way if we can't properly understand what's happening in committee. It's a matter of privilege for me to be able to understand the interaction.
Donc, est-ce qu'on peut...
Can the interpretation resume? Yes, it can. Can you hear me? It's working.
Listen, the first round's always the toughest, so I just want to get to the next person. I'm going to let you know. And I think Mr. Berthold has been clear with his intentions, and I think you have been here long enough that you know how this works. So there's certain things I can't do. So I think if it is just what he wants to do, I think that speaks to what he wants to do. Mr. Berthold.
I don't like aspersions being cast about my line of questioning, but Madam Chairperson, for the last time, how many diplomats were expelled from Canada by the federal government since 2015? Response. Here's my answer, Mr. Berthold. If there are ever Chinese diplomats that flout the Vienna Convention, then and there we will take action. In the meantime, here's what we've done. We have denied visas. We have castigated the Chinese ambassador on a number of occasions. We've made representations to Beijing directly, and we have attempted to protect Canadian staff on Chinese soil. There's a principle, Madam Chairperson, equal share of time. The Minister is taking much of my time in an effort to avoid responding to my question. But Madam Chairperson, says Minister Joly, the question is just so important that I must respond fulsomely. Well, Minister, what concrete action did you take against any diplomat whatsoever on Canadian soil who were embroiled in election interference since you were appointed Minister? That's a good question, Mr. Berthold. We have done several things. As Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have a lot of tools at my disposal. Yes, you already said that. You've said it often, says Mr. Berthold. But the first thing that we did, of course, says Minister Joly, is to broach our Chinese counterparts about election interference. And I did so even last week.
C'est la prochaine personne.
We heard the beep, beep, beep. It's up to the next speaker.
Mrs. Sahota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm going to start. Hopefully, I can get some answers to some of the great questions Mr. Berthold asked, but we couldn't hear the interaction properly. So I think I will give the floor back to Minister Joly, because I think it's really important to understand the mindset or the calculation that GAC has to take when making decisions. What types of decisions does Global Affairs and yourself and your department take when you are made aware of these types of problemsome interferences in our relations?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, dear colleague Sahota. So first and foremost, obviously this is an issue that we've been dealing with for some time, and I've been foreign minister now since 2021. And one of the things that was really important was to have a clear stance on China. And so what we did in our Indo-Pacific strategy was actually to make sure that we would draw our red lines and how we would be engaging with China. And now, since it's extremely clear, we now have our rules of engagement. But before then, as we were dealing with, obviously, diplomats that we expect that they stay in their lane, if there are any issues with any form of violation of the Vienna Convention, of Canadian law whatsoever, first and foremost, we engage directly with China, because that's what G7 countries do. It is in our national interest to do so. It is in our allies' interest to do so, as the geopolitical situation is extremely complicated and getting more complicated. The other thing we do is since Canadians had concern, I clearly instructed my department to call in the ambassadors and make sure also that our ambassador, Jennifer May, in Beijing would be in direct contact with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China. That has happened many, many, many times in the past year. And so the other thing also, when China wanted to send a political operative last fall, we decided to deny a visa, which obviously is the right thing to do. But these are the different actions that we've put into place. And let me tell you, if we have any form of clear evidence of any wrongdoing, we will send diplomats packing very, very, very quickly.
Do you feel at this point it would be in the best interest of Canadians and our institutions to expel all Chinese diplomats?
See, I know that on the side of the Conservative, this is something that is an easy fix, a quick fix. But the reality is when we take that decision, it has an impact on us also in China. For any expulsion, there is an expulsion afterwards of us in China. And right now, our biggest challenge is to understand how China operates, how they plan, how they work. And I believe profoundly in the importance of diplomacy and our diplomats. More than ever, we need capacity. We need eyes and ears on the ground, like I said before. We need to be able to address and defend national interests that we have in our bilateral relationship. And also, I'm extremely concerned by the protection of Canadians abroad. And so we know we have consular cases with China. We need to engage to protect these people. This is something that keeps me up at night. And so that is why it is important that we have capacity in Beijing and across our network in China.
How important was in the case of the two Michaels to have diplomats on the ground in China present?
I would say it was fundamental, Ruby. It was extremely important. And in front of this committee, I would just like to thank our Beijing team that was instrumental in making sure that the two Michaels came back to Canada. And you guys all have consular cases in your office. I have the chance to talk to many of you about it. You know how much it's difficult when a citizen of one of your constituents comes to you and says, I have an issue with my family, or a family member of mine is in a difficult situation elsewhere in the world. Of course, we want to make sure to offer that service, and it is particularly true in China.
Another quick question. You mentioned in your introductory remarks about the G20 foreign ministers meeting that you just had. You said you delivered a message to China. What was the delivery of that message? What did you say, and how was that message received?
I wanted to make sure that I was able to meet with my counterpart. Why? Because he's a new foreign minister. I had a conversation and a relationship, a tough one, with Wang Yi, the former foreign minister, who's now at the Politburo. Now I wanted to create this relationship, which is a difficult one, but a necessary one, with the new foreign minister. I was not the only one wanting to talk to him, because obviously all my G7 counterparts, and even I would say G19 counterparts, wanted to engage. But I was extremely clear. I looked at him in the eyes and said to him, first, we will never tolerate any form of foreign interference in in our democracy and internal affairs. And second, we will never tolerate any form of breach of our sovereignty. And so that is why I think it's important to have these tough discussions. They're not something that we like doing, but I think it's
Thank
necessary
you.
for Canadians.
Merci. Madame Goudreau, 6 minutes à vous.
6 minutes, Ms. Goudreau. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I was waiting for this moment, and here it's come. We discussed this week, and we're among ourselves, each other, so we can speak freely. We have 6 minutes. My constituents want to know, we all wanted to know, on what basis did we opt for a special reporter rather than together in a non-partisanship way in full cognizance with a view to not undermining the confidence and trust of Canadians and Quebecers? Why choose a special rapporteur rather than leaving it up to us to choose together to demonstrate our good faith? I'd like to know the justification, the argument behind that, the rationale. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Thank you, Ms. Goudreau. Now, in the last 40 minutes that we've been here, it's been a clear demonstration that taking partisanship out of the mix ain't no easy matter. And we've seen this in question period too. And I share what you've said in the House of Commons, what your colleagues have too, that Canada will be well served with a non-partisan, transparent probe that Canadians can follow so that they can get a sense of the nature of that interference, what we've done as a government. We believe we have a good track record, but we need to strengthen it further. We've already done so. And the whole idea behind a special rapporteur is to very quickly define the steps that need to follow. This is a normal process. Had we immediately struck a commission of inquiry, the question would have been, how did you choose those terms of reference? Why haven't you done X, Y, or Z? Have you given access to A, B, and C? We were asked to act in short order. We are acting in short order, and the person will be chosen based on their integrity, their experience, their non-partisanship. And it's our hope that that individual will be able to provide us advice and counsel as to the next steps. That's the best way, to our minds, of depoliticizing the issue. And we hope that everyone will see that we are working towards the same goal. I understand, Madam Chairperson, all the good intentions behind this. But folks are asking us questions, and there's been a whole lot of surveys and polls. Trust is plummeting from year to year. There was an opportunity, a window of opportunity to demonstrate that together we could have chosen an individual. Perhaps it would have been the very same person that you will choose as special rapporteur. But in terms of our image and for the benefit of future elections, there was the issue of choosing together. We made this choice together. We reached a consensus. We found common ground. And then we could have made that announcement. I'm not used to how things work here. What I saw in the Rouleau Commission play out is that when an in-camera session is needed, they go in camera. And this allows us to pull the shroud off these issues and show the bald-faced truth to the public. But we don't want this to be sort of scripted, as you seem to be scripting it. Can we just take a step back here and agree that we should be able to consult on this and choose someone? We spent a lot of time at question period discussing this. Can't we move on to something else and show that we are willing to work together? Well, we are here to work together. And I share a lot of your points. Maybe not how pessimistic you are about certain aspects, election turnout. We have an election turnout in Canada, I'm proud to say, which is among the best on the worldwide. And we can always do more. I agree with you. The Prime Minister consulted and will consult with opposition parties before the appointment of a special rapporteur. We've said, and we continue to say, that this will find an individual who will ensure that measures are put in place immediately, that individual will identify gaps, further steps that we can take. If we can appoint a credible person and give them terms of reference to act quickly, and the Prime Minister has committed to announcing that name very shortly. And I think that we'll both arrive at the same point with the same outcome that we're both looking for. I see. Well, just let me make sure I understand this. You're going to opt for a special rapporteur, and you're telling me that all the opposition parties have been consulted when it comes to this choice? The Prime Minister said at the press conference on Monday evening that he would consult opposition parties before selecting a special rapporteur. Perhaps there will be no unanimous choice or consensus, but I am sure that when the name is chosen of that individual, we'll be able to turn down the volume here, focus on the shared common challenges that face us, and decide on the next steps. And I sincerely hope that that will be a promising endeavour.
Mais je veux juste dire, Madame Goudreau,
Ms. Goudreau, thank you very much. I think that was a good back and forth, and I think that's the way, an example of how we should move forward with the questioning.
Melanie.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I thank the ministers for being here, and I am grateful that you waited a few extra minutes to sit at the table with us today. I just also want to put on the record that when we have that kind of intense back and forth, it's also very hard for interpreters. They do hard work for us, and I hope all of us respect the work of those folks when they're having conversations. My questions are going to be through the chair to Minister Joly. This is a really serious issue. I am very, very concerned, and I take this very seriously. And I want to appreciate the fact that you talked about the difference between China's government and the Chinese people. And I think that that's something I hope every Canadian hears very clearly, that we cannot mix up the two. But I'm also very curious about the fact that I read a Globe and Mail, and they cited that a CSIS report from December 2021, where a Chinese diplomat, Tong Xiaoling, boasted about interfering with the elections. So I'm trying to understand this. I want to understand, were you aware of the intelligence reports? Were you aware of those or any similar accusations of Ms. Tong? And we know that she did not leave her post until August of 2022, even though the CSIS report of her claims of interference was provided 8 months earlier. So I'm trying to figure out, were you aware of this? Were there any actions taken on the part of yourself and the department to pressure the Chinese government to withdraw her as a diplomat? If you could give us some clarity on that, because I think this is part of the problem and why Canadians are questioning so many of our institutions.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Madam Blaney. This is a very important question. First and foremost, I get many briefings. Many of them have sensitive information, and obviously the right committee for me to be able to address these issues is an SICOP. And of course, if they ask me to go, I will definitely be going. That being said, everything that is linked to foreign actions in Canada is under the purview of my colleague, the Minister of Public Safety. And so I don't have a specific answer for this case. That being said, if I was presented with clear evidence about any form of wrongdoing that goes against the Vienna Convention, and when I say that, Rachel, I mean anything that would be wrongdoing, accordance with our Canadian law, I would send them packing.
Thank you for that, Minister, and I hear very clearly that you cannot answer that. But what I'm trying to understand is, how was this person in this particular position allowed to stay for 8 months, despite the fact that concerns were raised. And I guess the other component of this question, and you referred to it earlier in your conversation, was that the department did refuse to grant a visa to a person who was coming from China in a new diplomatic position at their embassy in the fall of 2022. So I know you can't go into nuances, but could you at least provide the public with some sort of understanding of how it is that one individual was allowed to stay in this country for 8 years after explicitly boasting about interfering in our election process? And then later on, you were able to refuse a visa. Like, I'm trying to get some clarity. Was there a specific change within the process? And I want to correct myself. I think I said years, it's months, 8 months. But I want to understand the process so that Canadians have some sort of transparency. So if you can't speak to this in specifics, has something changed? Is there a new rule that you're implementing that is preventing this? Is it because they were already in the country? Do we have weaknesses in allowing or removing people who should be removed from our country? Is it easier when they come in the door to prevent that from happening? So if you could provide some sort of process answers, I think that would help clarify to Canadians their serious and important concerns.
And I agree, they are serious concerns. A couple of things on that. First and foremost, as I said, I can't go into the specific issue, but what I can tell you, though, is when it comes to our own accreditation process for granting visas to diplomats, I think that there's a higher level of awareness in the last months. And I think also that we've been following and making sure that the norms are in place. And I've instructed my department to never shy away from denying a visa if it's for a political operative and therefore linked to the Communist Party of China. So that's my first point. My second point, when it comes to Chinese diplomats in general, we've summoned the Chinese ambassadors many times. I've instructed my department to do so. I think that it is important for us to be able to send strong messages and to make sure that any form of action stop through this engagement. Now, should that not be the case, afterwards, like I said, we would never hesitate from expulsing.
And I
these
apologize, I have 10 seconds left.
No, go
So
ahead, sorry.
it's clear to me, and what I understand you to say is it's easier to prevent people from coming into the country than it is to get them out of the country when they're here.
If I can just end that, I think that I believe it's easier to prevent. I think that the question afterwards when it comes to diplomats in our country is how do you make sure that you have the evidence to deal with an expulsion?
Thank you.
And what are the impacts of an expulsion also?
Thank you. I appreciated that, Mrs. Blaney. There's just a little bit of a nuance going on with our timer and my timer, so we do both make sure everyone knows I time it all. We are going to just get to have one round, so one more Conservative, Liberal, and then the 2.5, and then we will have ministers go on their way. Mr. Cooper, up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, ministers, for being here. Through you, Madam Chair, to Minister Joly, you've talked tough. You've talked tough with your Beijing counterpart, so you say. You even stared into his eyes. I'm sure he was very intimidated. And now we learned today, or yesterday in the Globe and Mail very conveniently, that a visa was denied of a diplomat who wanted to work at the Canadian Beijing embassy. One visa, is that it? One visa? How many visas have been denied? Just one?
So I won't comment on your question and particularly the beginning because I think it's actually
Madam,
the tone.
I'm going to pause time. I'm pausing time. Our approach here is very important. So I would just say be mindful. Mr. Cooper, earlier one of your colleagues had said We want to make sure how much time we speak, the response is given. You spoke for 43 seconds. The minister will be given close to the same time. You are at 10 seconds already done. Minister.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Cooper, you would know China because you went to China as a parliamentarian in the past. And so therefore, I think you would understand that when we fall into too much partisanship, we're falling into China's trap, which is trying to sow division in many
how
democracies.
many visas of Beijing diplomats have been denied? Is it just one? How many?
I can give you under my watch. What I can tell you is that there was a visa that was not granted back this fall.
And so one. Okay, thank you for answering that. One visa denied under your watch. Minutes
And
ago.
I just wanted to.
No,
it's a
my
diploma.
time.
No. But just
Madam Chair, my
but
time is limited, and I'm going to
it's
ask
for
my
you
next
to
question.
understand.
Minister, okay,
ju-
pause.
I just want to make sure that we all understand
Minister
that it's a
Joly?
diplomatic visa. So it is a diplomatic visa. Obviously, we have visas
My
for the
question
Chinese
was
community.
prefaced on how many diplomatic visas. One. You've answered that question. You said moments ago that Beijing's Ambassador Kong has been summoned on many occasions. It's true that the ambassador has been summoned with respect to the balloon incident, with respect to illegal police stations, but not on election interference. Why?
We've summoned the ambassador on many, many subjects, including foreign interference of all sorts, including within our democracy.
On election interference? Yes or no?
Like I said, yes.
When?
And maybe Jenny, you can add to that because the department would know, of course.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to add that Ambassador Tong, diplomatic representations were made to Ambassador Tong by senior officials at GAC on February 24th.
With respect to interference in the 2019 and 21 elections.
Based on yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Madam Minister, it's been more than 6 months since we learned of illegal police stations operating in Canada by Beijing. We just learned in the last 24 hours that there are 2 operating in Montreal, one in Brossard, one in Montreal, within 30 minutes of your riding. And yet 6 months later, election interference, illegal police stations, tough talk, but not a single diplomat expelled. Why not?
So when it comes to police stations, the RCMP has confirmed that they have been closed. And so my colleague, Minister of Public Safety, has also given a lot of information on that aspect before. Of course, we will not tolerate any form of foreign interference, including police stations. I've been having many conversations with my colleagues around the world on this issue, particularly Tony Blinken again last week. And we will work within the Five Eyes to identify any form of foreign interference, including
one visa denied,
police station.
not a single diplomat expelled, hardly the actions of a government that takes Beijing's interference seriously. Minister, when you last appeared before this committee on December 13th, you said repeatedly, unequivocally, that you had no information about Beijing's interference in the 2019 and 21 elections. How is it that the Globe and Mail and Global News have information based on their review of CSIS documents about significant interference by Beijing in the 2019 and 21 elections, but you, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, know nothing? How is that possible?
Well, when it comes to activities of foreign actors in the country, the Foreign Affairs Minister was not made aware. And since then, I've made sure that that changed, that would not be the case, because obviously, as everybody around this table would be aware,
You've
it is
asked to be
important.
briefed. You didn't know anything in December.
Can I
but
just finish my sentence, please, Michael? So obviously, in the context, as colleagues around this table would agree, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, I need to make sure that I have access to that information in order to conduct our diplomatic relationships in a good way, in Canadians' interest.
Mr. Turnbull.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And let me just say to the ministers my apologies for what you've had to witness today in this committee in terms of the condescending tone. And I apologize on behalf of my colleagues because I don't think they will. But I'll start off with the comment or a question to you, Minister LeBlanc. Have you read the recent Morris Rosenberg report?
Yes, I have, and I've had an opportunity also to discuss with Mr. Rosenberg his recommendations and the nature of the work that he did late last fall as well.
Thank you. I noticed in the Rosenberg report that there was specific reference in a footnote on page 26 that 3 of the political parties participated in the briefings during the last election, and all continued to support a panel composed of senior public servants. What I found interesting about it was that it was noted that the Bloc Québécois didn't participate in those briefings. Do you find that surprising?
Mr. Turnbull, I think I saw the leader of the Bloc explaining at some point why they chose not to participate. We think it's important that all political parties designate senior campaign officials who can receive the appropriate security clearances and be briefed directly by nonpartisan senior officials responsible for monitoring and enforcing Canadian law, including obviously countering foreign interference. So we thought this was an important part of our Protecting Democracy initiative. We certainly intend to continue making available to political parties and their representatives a chance to participate in this process. We think it strengthens, as some previous questions have identified, the overall public confidence in the measures the government of Canada is taking to protect institutions.
Thank you for that response. I think I agree with you that it does add to the transparency and the overall confidence that Canadians have in our electoral process. And I think that's a good thing. And I hope that all political parties would participate in those briefings, especially when they later are claiming that somehow our government is not serious about foreign election interference. So, Mr. LeBlanc, though, I want to ask you, do you intend to implement the recommendations from the Rosenberg report?
Yeah, of course we do. The answer is yes. We had done that following the report done by Jim Judd, a former director of CSIS as well, after the 2019 election. The Prime Minister committed publicly on Monday evening, and I even had a chance to talk with the clerk yesterday and again this morning. He assigned her and me a little bit of homework to look at, obviously, the 16 recommendations Mr. Rosenberg made, look at the Judd report again, to take a constat, to take a look at how we had evolved for the 2021 election, but look at reports from the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. Some members here have sat or sit on that group. And come back to the Prime Minister with a public report to him within 30 days of Monday. We had a discussion, is it 30 working days, sitting days, calendar days? We're just going to err on the side of doing it as quickly as possible, Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you for that. And that's great, and great to hear, because I've read the report and there's quite a few really good recommendations I think they're in there that we can benefit from. In terms of foreign interference, reports on foreign interference have been, I think it's been reported for over a decade. So why do you think that we've only really seen action starting in 2015? Mr. LeBlanc?
Well, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Turnbull, I've said a number of times in the House of Commons that we have taken this issue seriously since we formed government. You're right to note that previous public reports by CSIS go back over a decade to 2013. Mr. Harper's former national security advisor was talking publicly on national television networks even a few years before. So this is not new in the last few years. It's certainly not unique to Canada, as I said. We wanted to take a strong, robust approach, which we have continued to evolve. The Leader of the Opposition, I thought, you were in the House earlier this week, offered an interesting take. When he was minister responsible for democratic institutions, these reports were public. He had taken no action himself as minister responsible for democratic institutions. And in sort of a smart little quip to his second question, he said to me, oh, that's okay because it wasn't benefiting the Conservative Party. I thought that was a rather perverse way to look at one's public responsibilities.
Thank you. Madame Goudreau, 2 minutes et demi pour vous.
Oui, mais je reviens.
2.5 minutes. So I'll come back to my previous question. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Minister, here's what I'd like to know. I said earlier, we're among ourselves here. How do the exchanges of information occur between the Prime Minister, the site task force? How do you operate to ensure that everyone is kept abreast of everything pertinent? I believe there have been changes made. I'd like to hear your feedback. Well, I just want to understand what you're saying or asking. You're saying, what kind of dialogue do I have with the Prime Minister? Well, what are the rules? What are the goalposts to ensure that you are kept abreast and that there's communication with the site task force, with the Prime Minister? How frequently do you speak to them? Well, I get briefed a lot, oftentimes in person in Ottawa. There are secret briefings. Sometimes I get briefings when I'm on the road. Oftentimes I am on the road. And sometimes when I'm on the road with the Prime Minister, well, then someone briefs us. Those briefings can be on anything and everything to do with foreign affairs, both domestically and abroad. My goal as Minister of Foreign Affairs is to keep abreast of what's happening on the world stage so that such that we can properly conduct our diplomatic efforts and protect our country and its integrity. Under our Indo-Pacific strategy, we observed that, one, we needed to increase our capacity vis-a-vis China. And that's why we earmarked $2.3 billion to increase our presence in the region, augment our capacity, and we recognize that the RCMP and CSIS needed to do more too in order to manage issues of foreign interference. And that's why we invested $88 million to fund staffing efforts. The Europeans, the Americans, other nations in the world are discovering the same things that we are. I discussed the issues with Penny Wong, the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Australia recently, because Australia had to come to grips with similar issues in the past, and I did that with a view to getting a better understanding.
Well, thank you so much, Chair. And my question is going to be to Minister LeBlanc. But before I ask that question, I just want to say, as a woman politician, I remember at the very beginning of my career being asked if I was tough enough to do the job. And I think it's absolutely devastating that that sort of frame of reference would be used in this way. I believe a minister has a position of power, regardless of gender or identity, and that should be respected. And I'm sure that internationally it is. And I think it's shameful that that was even said in this place. So I just wanted to put that on the record. So
Thank you, Rachel, for this.
through you, Chair, to Minister LeBlanc, you know, when I look at where we're at right now, we know that Canadians are rightly concerned and that our political system, our electoral system is being discussed around kitchen tables because people are not sure if they can trust our institutions anymore. We know that many people with a lot of experience, Richard Fadden, Jean-Pierre Kingsley, Gerald Butts, Arthur Wilczynski, even my leader, Jagmeet Singh, have all asked for a public inquiry. Because I fundamentally believe that it needs to be transparent, public, and independent. Right now, what is happening is we're seeing all of this debated and fought out in a very public, political realm. And it's extremely partisan. And that does concern me, because if we're going to have Canadians trust our systems, we need to have processes that engender faith and belief. And right now we have a feeling that the government is hiding something. We have the Conservative Party creating a lot of fear that is telling people you just have to stop trusting, what we should all trust. And we're not focusing on how do we strengthen our systems in an ever-changing reality of foreign interference from many, many countries. So I'm just wondering if you can explain to me why the Prime Minister says that if the Special Rapporteur says we need a public inquiry, we're going to do that. Why are we waiting? Why are the systems and everything that is being proposed by your government not allowing for that transparency, public and independent frame?
Well, Madam Chair, through you, Ms. Blaney, thank you for the question, but also thank you for your comments about the inappropriate comments that Mr. Cooper made earlier. I would agree with you that Canadians need to have a robust and pervasive trust in their democratic institutions. That's precisely why we have taken a series of incremental measures every election, including the nonpartisan professional public service. Nobody around this table would imagine that the clerk of the Privy Council, the head of Canada's public service, is a partisan figure. And when he or she, for example, chaired the protocol or testified before this committee or made public comments along with other senior officials, it's precisely designed to restore that confidence. But we believe, and I know, Madam Chair, we're out of time, we believe, Ms. Blaney, that the Special Rapporteur is again another step in depoliticizing this conversation and pointing a path forward that hopefully takes us to the place that I think you and I want to get to, and that other colleagues have referred to, where we can have a thoughtful conversation around strengthening davantage our institutions.
Thank you so much for that. With that, I would like to thank all of you for coming. Sometimes we don't always have enough time to answer the questions because we run out of time so quickly. We welcome you to send us any answers or extensions of answers in writing to the clerk, and we'll share those around. With that, we don't have a lot of time left here, so we're continuing our meeting quickly, and we thank you for making time to come, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day. Appreciate it to you and your teams. Just because we have limited times, and I know interpreters, I'm already pushing it, so I apologize. We have resources confirmed from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. We will be returning to this room, O25B. I will be here shortly before 4:30, and we will be here 4:30 to 6:30 unless we can get out faster, but those resources have been confirmed. So just a reminder to all members that we're coming back for that. Ms. O'Connell?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Ms. Blaney for pointing it out, but I have a point of order in regards to the conduct of Mr. Cooper and his comments. I think any woman sitting around this room, I'm sure men can appreciate it and understand it too. The constant demeaning nature that only occurs to our female minister that appeared today. Yesterday, it was another member of our team asking a question in QP, and a Conservative member said she deserved a participation medal. Today, it was a question of whether this minister is tough enough. Every single day, we sit in this house as women, and we hear these, they're called microaggressions, but they don't feel very micro, to continuously be undermined. And I think he owes this committee and the minister in particular an apology. And I am really sick and tired of sitting in here having to listen to it. I am sick and tired of Canadians having to see it. And I'm really sick and tired of the Conservatives just not getting it.
Mrs. Romanado?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I, too, am really disappointed. I want to know if that member opposite, when then Prime Minister Stephen Harper confronted Vladimir Putin and said, get out of Ukraine, did that member opposite say, was he tough enough? That was completely unacceptable. Unacceptable behavior for every woman that has ever taken her place in this House. And I demand an apology under Standing Order 18.
Mr. Fergus, I would just say be mindful of the volume for speakers, and I just tapped it with my pen, so sorry. Mr. Turnbull.
I was finished.
I didn't realize it was on the list, Madam Chair. I think it was Mr.
Oh,
Fergus.
Mr. Fergus, my apologies.
Effectivement, moi aussi.
Indeed. Me too. I demand an apology from the member in question. That's about it. As a man who's very sensitive to these issues, such as discrimination, and just like my colleague Ms. O'Connell said, this smacks of microaggressions. But when you are the victim, it's much, much, much more than a microaggression. It is a macroaggression. And I hope that he'll be decent enough to make an apology, especially the very day after International Women's Day to boot.
I thank you for that. I will just remind all members that, especially when we're having, and it shouldn't be cool if it's not in public, we should just be mindful as to the work that we're doing. Yeah, there's a lot of things around this place that make me puke in my mouth often, so it's really unfortunate. We can be better than this, so I'll leave it at that. And if anybody wants to act on the comments, we can figure that out later. Just in a quick second, since we are coming back at 4:30, this committee is also tasked with redistribution. So amongst our ways of finding a way forward, I did try to have 1 day for redistribution, 1 day for this study. Obviously, that's not the approach the committee wants to take. And I know there's questions being asked by our colleagues, when do we get to come? I don't have answers for them because I would like us all to find a way forward. The reports that are ready for me to present, when we return to the House after constituency week, I will present them in the House. And as I've been asked, and I usually do, I'll give the vice chairs a heads up that I am presenting them. So with that, I would really encourage us to be mindful of the topic of the day and what's important and why we're here. And I'll see you at 4:30 in this room. Take care, and I'm suspending.